Welcome to the fifth episode in the Power of Listening interview series. And today I'm joined by Kirsten Heynisch, who grew up in East Berlin, behind the wall. I think that brought quite a lot of challenges, and um, I know you have your own podcast as well, where people can learn more about that. But I think you had quite a lot of years of overcoming that kind of oppression and limiting like beliefs and ideas that came with that. Quite like very interesting background. I believe you've trained you've been a psychologist for 30 years,
Mhm,
and you've worked with the NHS for 20 years. Um, you've run like group therapy as well,
mhm,
and worked with like mental health colleagues and clinical professionals
mhm,
to support them. And then, like more recently, over the last few years, you've created your own psychotherapy practice where you support business owners and leaders who were struggling with a range of things, from like stress and anxiety
mhm,
to burnout and grief
mhm,
and transition. And recently moved into coaching too. And
mhm,
I know I've been following your Mental Health Matters podcast as well. You've got like some really interesting conversations on those and experience to share. So I just wanted to welcome you today. Give anyone that's watching a sense of who you are, but we'll share how people can find out more about you as well later in the call.
excellent.
And I know that with all that, like the work on yourself and your family, you've got like a daughter as well, haven't you?
Mhm,
And that your work with clients, and some of the videos you've shared as well, that you've got you place a real importance on and value on listening and deep listening. I say listening with love. I think you call it heart-centered listening. And I'd just like you to share, if you can,
mhm,
what that means to you. Like,
mm,
how is it different from everyday listening that we might get involved in?
mm. Well, thank you, Victoria, for having me and your lovely introduction. Lovely to be here with you. Yes, so listening, different ways of listening. Yes, let me just, I, yes, there is everyday listening, when we listen to the words in a way, and maybe when we just try to exchange information, which is a way of listening. But maybe the listening you and I are beginning to explore is like a listening that has a different quality. And I would almost see that kind of listening is potentially a real act of generosity and love, an act of love that we can extend to others, but also to ourselves. I think this is really very important that it can be extended outward, but it also inward as well. And I think that two, I think, really important ingredients in from my perspective in good listening. And the one is that we're listening with our hearts, which maybe differentiates the listening with our ears, saying, okay, you're going there and I meet you in town or whatever, which is just information exchange. But if we're listening with our hearts, it's very different. It's listening with our ears and hearts. That means we we listen more deeply, and we listen maybe not just to the words, but maybe also to the energy or the music by which the words are carried in a way. And I think we need to have an open heart to listen well. That means um, to be able to connect with our own feelings in a way, is a requirement for being able to connect with another person's feelings. So that's what I mean by an open heart.
Oh, I love that. It sounds like you're saying kind of listen with a space that allows anything.
Yes.
Maybe the feelings that are coming, um, that are stirring within ourselves, and
Mm,
and the f- and kind of like the words and the feelings, um, that are coming from someone else too.
that's right. Yes, in that sense, listening as an invitation, to allow the other person, but also ourselves, to unfold what wants to unfold, in a way. Yes.
Because often I think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but um, often listening, um, when we don't listen like that, so and feel like we can often get triggered by what people are saying or sharing, or like we can begin to take it personally, and um, kind of be like eager to defend ourselves or
Mm,
respond.
mm.
Um, and I'd be just kind of interested in how a person um, can reach that level of it, like listening. So I think what I'm going to ask is, like, has your listening always been like that, or was there a time
Okay.
where it changed? Um,
Yes. No, I love that question. So I think the kind of listeners we are becoming, or we has a lot to do with our experience earlier in life, yeah, in a way. I think I was almost conditioned to become a very good listener in some ways to others, because my mum was emotionally quite fragile and unstable. And as a kid, I grew up trying to read her, trying to be quite tuned into her. I think that's not so uncommon, especially in the world of therapists, psychologists, and coaches, that we tend to be quite attuned to other people's feeling, which is I found a very wonderful gift, but it can also be a curse. And because in a way, so that's where my listening skills, or the seeds for me becoming a psychologist and a coach, were kind of it was a fertile ground for me to become a good listener. But this kind of conditioning was at a detriment to myself, because I didn't learn to listen to myself very well. So I listened well to others, trying to tune in and having a very fine antennae, about where what other people might be feeling, being very attentive. But I was quite cut off from my own feelings, because that was not I didn't have good responses to that from my mother especially. So I became quite disconnected, and I think, again, that's not so uncommon. I think that's many of us start in life in that way. So I was a good listener outward, but I was not a good listener inward when my journey in life started. And that was really quite harmful to me, because I couldn't that also undermined my self-worth, because I didn't know what I was feeling often, when I was younger and in my 20s, let's say. And also with that came also that I had quite poor boundaries, because we need to know what we are feeling in order to set a healthy boundary. And so no, so this is where I started, being a good listener outwardly, but not inwardly. And it has taken me, yeah, years, decades in therapy, in coaching and self-development, to become a much better listener to my feelings, to my needs, and then of course I think to balance it with also listening to others. In a way, I think it's equally important to listen well to ourselves as it is to listen to others. And that's what I've developed over the years, in my trainings, but also in my own journey in a way. Yeah.
And what can you share about what that entails? Kind of listening to yourself. So someone can get a sense of, well, yes, I do that, or no, no, I don't, or that that sounds useful. I might want to
Mm,
explore that a little bit.
yes, yes, yes. Well, I tell you maybe first what it feels like, like to be a good listener to one's own inner world of thoughts and feelings. I'm now in a position, and I'm really happy about that, that I totally trust myself with decisions I make. I'm in tune with myself. I and I can tap into wisdom, creativity, and possibilities, and that's not always been the case. So the feeling is trust in my own decisions, yeah, in a way, in my own discernment about who to move close to, who to move away from, yeah, in a way, in my boundaries. So I think the outcome of being a good listener inward is that we can trust ourselves totally, totally. And I think the journey, the steps are, I think, to cultivate curiosity, which again is also very good for listening without, to others, obviously. So curiosity, which is kind of, and again, that is just as important to others as it is inwardly. How am I feeling in this moment? How am I feeling? Just as it is important when we listen to others to saying, how are you feeling? What does this feel like? So that's a good question, being curious about that. And I sometimes when I work with clients where I help to kind of cultivate that inner culture, I almost describe it like imagine like an inner baby monitor, where we constantly check in with ourselves, how am I feeling with this person? How am I feeling with that person? What does it feel like being um, working? Is my body full of energy or depleted? Like asking curious questions inwardly, as we would do outwardly as well, in a way.
Yeah. I'm getting a big sense of like the more um that it just compounds. So the more you're able to listen to yourself, the better you're able to listen to others.
Yes, I
I can,
totally think that's such a crucial understanding. Yes, that is so true. We can only really tune into another person's emotional experience as deeply as we can in our own inner world. When I say inner world, is inner world of thoughts and feelings and memories, and having processed also our childhood experiences and being at peace with them. It's part of that as well. It's part of the wider project in a way. To have almost like a clean filter, in a way, a clean processing power in our minds. Yes, I agree.
and what would you say the impact of listening like that is on
Mm,
on the people? You've mentioned like listening to yourself like that kind of develops this inner trust,
yes.
and comfort with the decisions that you make, and
Mm,
getting that there's a kind of peace with that, and a confidence with that. But
yes.
what impact does it have for the people that you listen to? Like
Yes. Yes. Maybe I just respond to it in my work, but also in my private life. But I think the clients I work with who feel deeply listened to, and that's true, I think, for all of our clients and all of our relationships. There is a developing trust. I mean, when you know that yourself, and I do. If I sense that someone really is listening well, my whole body relaxes somehow. We kind of the shoulders drop, and something kind of expands, and so that is one of the impacts that we kind of relax with the other. So I sense that in my clients. It takes that they can relax with me and build a trusting connection. In time, it takes a bit of time. So that's one, I think, impact. And the other one is if we are curious about the other person, they gently open up different layers, layer by layer. And that means also sometimes often clients say to me when I say, how do you feel after this session or after this conversation? They say, my mind feels a bit less disentangled. It feels a bit more as if we've before it was like a lump, that was almost like sitting there, and it's almost we disentangle and pull things back and open things up, and then the mind feels more organized in some ways, or clearer.
I think so like what you're describing, that trust and kind of creating that space for someone to open up and just be more willing to share. Because I think a lot of the
Yes.
times we go through life and we think this is okay to talk about with someone. This
Mm,
they probably don't
mm,
want to talk
mm.
about. I'll avoid this, or I'll only share so much. And I think when you give people that space to share more, like you say, like more comes out, and just in the sharing of it, it's not all compacted and held
Yes.
and held within, and it's not
Yes.
so heavy and tight, and that
Yes.
in itself, just being able to talk openly,
Mm.
um is it is just a kind of great relief, um
Yes.
and offers space to people, doesn't it? I think it's Michael Neal that says something like, um if you were to spend 20 minutes talking just to a lamppost and like sharing everything, um that like was going on for you, or
Yes.
that you were thinking, that in itself would be really therapeutic, just
Yes.
talking to a
Yes.
lamppost.
Right. Right. Yes.
And so to be heard by someone as well, and
Mm,
for
mm.
all that to be okay, um yeah, just a real therapeutic kind of effect and relief for people,
Mm.
isn't
It
it?
can be such a relief. Yes. Like you said, not to hold it in anymore, but it can be put on the table, and then we have shared it. And I think things that are shareable can then be thought about, in a helpful way, and we feel a bit less alone, once we've been able to share something. And yeah, that's another big, like impact in a way. Yes.
So that's a big part of like therapy work and like counseling and coaching and things like that. But you briefly said, and then privately as well. So I don't know if you want to share about the impact of kind of heart-centered listening on like private relationships outside of that practice, and the
Yes.
effect it has
Yes.
on those.
Yes. Yes. Yes, especially friends. I mean, family, I think, and friends as well. But family, we are often the closest with, and I think the more, the closer we are, I think the more trust is available. But equally, the more conflict can arise, in a way. And so I think, so there is one. Yeah, I mean, for example, yes, I think if we think about our children or our partners or spouses or parents or and closer friends, I think that's so important as well. So for example, this last year, I've had some sort of struggles with my daughter who's now 13, and she really changed from a primary school girl to a secondary school girl, from a tween to a teen. And within that, of course, she's become much more oppositional at times. I mean, at the moment we are very peaceful together, but there were times when just she had to oppose everything, sort of, and there was a lot of sort of tension between us and friction and misunderstanding. And there was a time, maybe that was at its height a year ago, when she had her first boyfriend and kind of pulled away. And it was a totally natural movement, as we know, but I felt something about that, and so did she, and I think at first, I think we were both so, and her dad as well, we were both so thrown by this experience that there was quite a lot of shouting going on, and because we were lost. And then after we had done enough of that, I really did take my own advice and listened and journaled and created space. And first of all, was trying to tune into myself. And I found that I was actually grieving the closeness that we had before, and something was changing. Natural, wonderful, she's confident, she makes good relationships. But I felt a real sense of loss from the kind of connection we had, which was changing into a new connection now, and we are quite settled in this right now. But a transition I experienced to be, I don't know, it was at times grieving, I was sad, I was jealous, I felt rejected, all these difficult feelings. And when I understood that within myself, and also through actually being listened to very well by some of my friends, I understood my inner territory. And that opened me up to listen to her a bit more, or much more. And she then, kind of often said things where I thought, I wanted to defend myself, so about screen time, let's say, and she said, "Yeah, you're just on about screen time," and then I just thought, just listen and don't speak back, So I really tamed my defensive self to not speak back, but to really, really listen, and just to take it in, even though inside I want to say yes, but, like. And when I listened and really cultivated that, she said, "Look, for me, it's important that I have my boyfriend, and I still love you just as much." And I kind of was really moved by actually the girl she was becoming, or the young woman she was becoming. And I listened and discovered something new about her, and but that was a bit of a process, So, and that's an ongoing process. I think it was like a big kind of almost like I don't know, like a whirlwind of a few months when we really battled and we were lost in it. And now, we are settled and in a new way, And yes,
That's so beautiful. I mean, I can understand kind of the challenges that time, having 3 girls myself that have all been through that change where,
yes, they
like,
have already been through it, have they?
yeah,
Yes,
well,
yes.
some going
It's
through it
ongoing,
now.
yes.
Yeah, but where, like, they suddenly, um it's not you taking care of them, and like, you're not the center of their world
Yes,
anymore.
yes,
They're
yes,
they're developing their own ideas and their
yes,
own desires,
yes,
and with that comes a bit of a clash,
yes,
of
yes,
and a bit of change and a bit of getting used to, and I love that, so much about that. But I love that you just shared a perfect example of where, being able to be with what we really feel
as well, yes.
helps us kind of know what's going on for us, and where
Mm,
those reactions are coming from for
mm,
us.
mm,
But also, like, that give the way you shared it, then it was just like that allowed you the space to then
mm,
listen to your daughter's kind,
mm,
because I,
mm.
I think so often we can enter conversations and we can listen to conversations and we can respond to them as though the person in front of us, like, everything they say is about us.
Yes,
Like, it's about the way we're acting or what we're not doing right, or um and really, when you're able to go inwards and see what's going on for
Mm,
yourself,
mm, mm,
you
mm.
realize that actually the conversation that's happening, like it could be about anything and everything, because
Yes,
what's really going on is the internal conversation that we're having, like with our like with ourselves. So you were sharing that, you felt quite sad that you were like losing her and that she was changing,
yes, yes, yes,
and
yes,
and your daughter feels quite sad that like she's wanting other relationships and space for that,
yes,
and time for that, and it's not, it's not about the people that are involved anymore. It's about what's going on internally
yeah,
for each other, isn't it? And
yes.
just being able to listen deeply to ourselves,
Mm, mm, mm.
a- and someone else to get to that layer,
Yes,
I think makes it, um well, it makes the conversations much kinder, much more understanding,
yes,
and
yes,
easier
yeah,
to
absolutely. Yes,
navigate.
yes,
Um, and then, like you say, you get to see the joy. You get to see something new. You get to
yes,
experience something that, um, you'd perhaps not recognised or noticed or acknowledged before. And
that's right. Yes, yes, that's the gift. That's the gift of listening to oneself and the other. Then there is a new connection and a new love, a renewed sense of connection, love, and joy. Yes, yes.
I really, really love that. And I think,
Mm.
um, I think we should like wrap it up there, unless you've got anything else you'd like to add on listening, or um, any
Yes,
like last tip or golden nugget you'd like to share with
right.
everyone.
Yes. Maybe there's one thing that we haven't so much touched on yet, which is we've about listening with an open heart, but it's also very important, just as important, to listen with an open mind. And an open mind is something we all need to cultivate in a way and develop, because we all have grown up and have internalized the judgments of the worlds we have lived in. So I think an open mind is a non-judgmental mind. But the reality is we all have judgmental minds because we all grew up in a world and internalize our parental and societal values, in a way. That's part of human development. And I think also it's our job on our journey to kind of deconstruct these old judgmental value system, that which kind of are made of good and right and wrong, good and bad. It's so I think when we have a more of a kinder, accepting, forgiving inner sort of inner world, there is no right and wrong, in a way. My daughter was not right, nor was I right or wrong. We just had different experiences and we needed to understand them. So I think that's an important element in good listening as well. To to tame our inner judges, which can be quite fierce, as we know, as we all know. Yes.
I think we could have a whole conversation on that
On that,
that alone,
totally,
couldn't we?
totally,
Um, but
totally.
but just to expand on that a little bit, for me, that is letting go of my sense of this is how it is. So it, I mean, it can be in a conversation, but it can just be in everyday life that we get an idea of, like, no, this is the right way to do something, or this is, um, the right way to think about something, and
Mm, mm, mm,
um, and it's, and yes, that absolutely looks like the right way now, given what we think about it and our experience.
mm, mm,
But for me, an open mind is just being open to that. That's not necessarily everyone's experience and everyone's view,
Mm, mm,
and and um or necessarily the right one.
yes, yes,
So yeah, I think that's really important. Thank you for bringing that up. Um,
yes. It's been fun talking about this. It's such an interesting subject, isn't it?
yes, thank
Mm,
you. And
mm,
so we started create like I started creating these interviews for the listening workshop we were doing, to give people a sense of what we were talking about and how that was different to everyday listening. And we now run like weekly webinars that people can join in
mhm,
the Power of Listening Facebook group. I know you've done podcasts and things on listening as well, and as I mentioned at the start, you've got your own like mental health matters
mm.
podcast, where you're having like quite um you're having big discussions about kind of taboo things, or things that people don't uh,
Yes,
openly
yes,
discuss very often.
yes.
So where's the best place to go for people to find out more about you, or listen to some of the things that you've created? I can share it after the video as well, but
Yes, yes, yes. Yeah, my website, I've got a website which is www.kirstenheynisch.co.uk, which is my name. And I also have a YouTube channel, a modest YouTube channel where I've published some videos on listening and listening with our hearts and minds, and where I publish my podcast, which I recently started. Yes, and I also have a Facebook page. So you can find me by, I imagine, typing in my name, and I'd be very delighted to speak with anyone who's interested in my work, or
yeah,
working with me, or just even having a conversation. Yes.
lovely. And I'll share that. And thank you very much for today,
It's been an absolute
Kirsten.
pleasure, Victoria.
Thank you. And we'll talk again soon.
Yes.